My name is Matt Carlucci, and I'm the co-chair with Earl Johnson Jr. of the task force that's putting together the 50th anniversary of our consolidated government that we enjoy here in Jacksonville. One of the interesting little tidbits is that both Earl's father and my father served on the first consolidated city council in Jacksonville. And Earl's father played a really big role in the capacity that he was in trying to get the electorate to vote for consolidation. And my dad played a big role, but in a different way. And so, but our dads were friends, just as Earl and I are friends. And so it's a real honor for us to chair the golden anniversary of consolidation because of everything that's done for our city. And so that's who I am in a nutshell, other than being a State Farm agent. I have served 3 terms on the city council, so I know a little bit of the streamlining that consolidation has given to Jacksonville in pursuing bigger and better things. And I will say this, without consolidation, I would be surprised if we would have ever done away with tolls many, many years ago. I'm not so sure we'd have a football team here in Jacksonville. I'm not sure we would have the Better Jacksonville plan passed, because all these had to be done by voter referendum. And if we were in the pre-consolidated government, we'd have a county government, we'd have a city government. And a lot of times those two, there's turf wars. And so consolidation, what it allows is for the mayor to speak to the whole community, as opposed to a small city limits and hoping that the county commissioners will agree with him. So that's what makes our government that's what makes so many other public officials envious of consolidation is because we don't have everything's more streamlined. We have one city council, and they are the checks and balances to the mayor's office, a Madisonian type of government. We have the legislative branch and the administrative branch and the judicial branch as well. But where I fit into this story in history of consolidation was when I was a young boy, about 11 years old. I used to go everywhere with my dad. And my dad had found out through his father-in-law, who lived around the corner, that he had received some flowers from the city. And he couldn't understand why. My grandfather couldn't understand why, but it was signed by his city councilman. And so that's all it took. He told that to my father. My father soon found out that there were city councilmen and county commissioners sending out flowers, chocolates, gifts, all kinds of things to their constituents, trying to endeavor to keep their vote and to find favor with these people. The only problem was they were spending the money with taxpayer dollars. They were buying these trinkets, flowers, gifts that they were spreading out to all the voters with city money. My dad dug into it and found out. And when he found out that city money was being used for this type of thing, he wrote a long letter to the editor or the general counsel at the time. I'm not sure what the general counsel was called before that time, but it was the head attorney of the city, and asked if such expenditures were legal. And to that attorney's credit, and I'm not sure who that was, he said no. So all those county commissioners, city councilmen were then forced to pay the money back. And so that's where my dad kind of got involved, and the Carlucci family kind of got involved, because there were like 11 public officials indicted on the charges of larceny and bribery, and that was unprecedented. So, and my dad was a part of that. My dad also found where a public official had his wife's kitchen completely remodeled with taxpayer funds. And the list could just go on. And so my dad described those public officials in that pre-consolidated era. He said they were rascals and they needed to be run out. And then suddenly, because my brother is artistically talented, my dad's fertile imagination took him to the point where, okay, I've got a son that can silkscreen and a wife and a younger son that can take these signs off silkscreen and lay them down in the garage until they all dry off, and then we're going to hang them around town. And so we did this just a couple of weeks prior to the vote on consolidation, whether you vote yes for it or no against it. So I have the last remaining sign that says, "Run the rascals out of City Hall." And that's, and that's where our father, my brother's father, began their journey into politics. And he ran for office. He eventually won, and after that, he never, he never turned back. He just kept going. But so it's a family affair with the Carlucci family, and it's mostly centered around the corruption that was involved. Also, the river was so polluted, and my father and some of his friends took all this red dye and put it in the toilets at the old City Hall at 220 East Bay Street, flushed them, went out to the parking lot, and that parking lot is actually elevated over the city. No, not many people know that. But sooner or later, here comes the red dye. There's 120 million gallons of raw sewage being pumped into the St. Johns River. I mean, it was a tidal cesspool, is what it was called by U.S. News and World Report back at the time in a big article. So my father didn't like that either. And so you combine that with most of the schools were disaccredited. Jacksonville was in a big mess. We needed a start, a new start. In the day that Jacksonville voted to consolidate our governments into one city, Jacksonville, although the beaches have their own government still, that was part of the compromise. Y'all get to keep your 3 beach communities, and Baldwin gets to keep their beach community and their city government. But the rest of Jacksonville was consolidated into one government. And that's a superior mechanism of government that you could find anywhere. So we've come a long way since the river was in that kind of shape. With those many people getting indicted, we have a Jacksonville Ethics Commission now, and this city has come a long ways in 50 years. And so now I kind of feel like we're on the brink of finally becoming that bold new city of the South that they proclaimed back when they created consolidation. But I can tell you with much certainty, we would not be the city we are today without consolidation. Doesn't mean it's perfect. You're only as perfect as the people that run the government. And people are not perfect. There was only a person that walked the earth that was perfect. So, but there was good people back in those days who were running for city council, and they ran because of a sense of stewardship towards the city and their children's future. Because their children's future, and even the people that were younger in those days, were doomed to what Hans Tansler, the first consolidated mayor of Jacksonville, said, to mediocrity, because Jacksonville just wasn't going anywhere. Well, that's not so today. We're going places. Jacksonville's doing very well. We still have issues to resolve, and never would I turn my back to those type of issues. But we have come a long ways.
What do you think this consolidation setup has meant? What does that mean for the future of Jacksonville? If you were talking to a millennial who doesn't understand the linkages and who doesn't understand, what potential there is now because of consolidated government, what would you tell them?
Well, that's one of the big goals that Earl Johnson and I have with the activities that we're putting on is to teach not only millennials, but there's people in their 40s and 50s that really don't understand what consolidation is, and they could be our next generation of leaders. And so just the way we leveraged consolidation for Better Jacksonville and for the Jaguars, you know, looking out into the future, I see where consolidation is a great tool to create a better future for our children and our grandchildren, because it's a more streamlined government, and the mayor can speak to the whole county as one, as opposed to having, you know, duplicate governments. We used to have a city fire department, a county fire department, a city sheriff's office, a county road patrol. I mean, it was. So what we hope to do is show the young people and those that are unfamiliar with consolidation what it is, how you can leverage it, to go back and do the things that should have been done years ago, some of the promises that went unfulfilled, take care of that, but leverage this superior mechanism of government. It's the finest form of government in the United States, and to use that to propel them into what's ahead of us in the future. And I have to tell you, the first line I remember my daddy using back when I was about 10, 11 years old, and he was running for office. And in that particular bid, he was not successful. But I'll never forget it. And he said, a politician looks to the next election, but a statesman looks to the next generation. I've had some people say that's kind of a worn out phrase, but it never will be to me, because that's what I heard. That's what I remember, the first thing I remember my father saying. And so my dad poured his fertile imagination. We printed up thousands and thousands of signs. We put them out as a family because he felt his children's future was riding on this passing. And I feel like there needs to be a reawakening of a lot of the population and future leaders that really don't understand how this great tool can be used to leverage an even better Jacksonville in the years to come. So it's one thing to talk about, you know, take a stroll down memory lane, and it's okay to do that. But what we really, Earl and I really want to accomplish is that this next generation of leaders will understand consolidation, will understand what the city used to be, a city doomed to mediocrity, to today's city with a downtown that's coming to life. We've got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nobody back in the 60s would have ever guessed where we would be today, except for perhaps the people that were pushing for consolidation.
And what was the story you told me about how the Duval thing only makes sense because of consolidation?
Well, this was really what Earl Johnson said, and if he'll be interviewed. But you know, this Duval that you hear at the ball field, you might hear it at the schools. Yeah, you hear it even in London. They hear it. Well, Jacksonville and Duval are really kind of the same thing, because when we consolidated, we annexed all of the county of Duval into the city of Jacksonville. So when somebody refers to Duval, they're really they're really talking about Jacksonville. And if you're talking about Jacksonville, you're talking about Duval County. So it's a little counterintuitive, as my friend Earl Johnson would say. But when they call out the name Duval, they're talking about Jacksonville.